This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. And for the first time, I am joined by Robert Garcia over Zoom. Robert, it is a pleasure to talk to you. As I said to you just then, I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. Obviously, very well respected, and you achieved a lot within the sport. So how are you doing? How's life?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. But yeah, we're busy staying in the gym every day with my fighters and preparing them. They are the athletes, and we have to prepare them to perform.
Now, obviously, you've got a lot of fighters that you work with, a lot of high-level, world-level athletes. But as I said to you before we come on to all of that, I just wanted to kind of reflect on your career so far, going back to your days as a professional and progressing into the role of a trainer. So just take me back to your initial memories of boxing, Robert. What was it that kind of enticed you into the sport? How did you get involved in boxing first?
Well, boxing's been part of my family for all my life. My father had a few amateur fights in Mexico, and when he came to the United States, he started training everybody in my family, my brothers and sisters, and we all learned the sport. I was the only one that continued doing it. My sisters never had any fights. My older brother had a few professional fights, but didn't really take it to the next level. And I was the only one. And then after me, well, Mikey, the youngest one. But it's been part of the family. It's boxing every day. Every time we have family reunions or something, it's always boxing. So it's been part of our family for all of our lives.
What's your earliest memory itself, Robert? Do you remember the first time you stepped into a boxing gym? Do you remember the first fight you watched?
I remember my father taking me and my older brother, to gyms in Los Angeles, in LA, to see. I remember seeing Roberto Duran train, and I also remember Pepino Cuevas, Mexican legend Pepino Cuevas. That's a memory I have from when I was maybe 3-4 years old. I also remember one thing that it's been in my memory for many years since that fight happened. It was Salvador Sanchez versus Wilfredo Gomez. My dad took me to watch the fight. We didn't go live, but we went to a closed circuit. It was through closed circuit. I remember. I don't even remember where my dad took me to see the fight, but I remember, everybody was so excited about the fight that my dad carried me in his shoulders, so I could see everything going on. That's a memory I have from when I was young, before I started boxing, when I was just a kid. My dad, like I told you, my dad used to take us to all the workouts, from Lake Pepino Cuevas, Roberto Duran, and I remember him taking me to watch that fight with Salvador Sanchez and Wilfredo Gomez.
What was it like going to watch the likes of Roberto Duran train live, a legend in the sport once again? What was it like seeing him in the flesh, in person, working away?
It was great seeing, me as a kid at that time. Well, I didn't really, pay much attention, but now that I remember the way he used to jump rope, the way he used to hit the speed bag nonstop for 3-4 rounds at a time, and the energy they always had during their workouts was something that now, we know what it takes to be great, legendary fighters like Roberto Duran. So we kind of try to push our fighters to be the same. Even though right now we have to also, a lot of things have changed in boxing, a lot of different training methods, a lot of different trainers that get involved in boxing with more science, more reasonable things. I think it has changed, but old school training was just old school training. It was hard work. You run hard, you train hard, and you're ready for your fights. Right now, there's been a lot of changes with science. which have actually been helping out a lot more when it comes to preparing a fighter. But it was just a big difference.
It's an interesting point you raised there. When you consider how boxing's evolved, you've got strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists. You know, there's a lot more kind of thought and more of a thought process around what fighters consume and how they manage their weight and what have you. Comparing how boxing is now compared to when you first come through, mentioning kind of an old school style when you first watched the sport, do you ever see fighters which kind of live a pampered life where they rely on others too much and they don't, and maybe sometimes they could do with that nitty gritty old school style a bit more?
You know what? I think, years ago, and when fighters like Salvador Sanchez or Robert Duran used to train, at that time there was no strength and conditioning, no dietitian, no cook, none of that. They trained very, very hard. They always, ate. I'm pretty sure, guys in Mexico, especially Mexico, coming from poor families, poor backgrounds, they didn't have the perfect food to eat every day. I think that made a big difference. The hunger that they had to succeed and to be great in the sport. Salvador Sanchez fought 15 rounds and wouldn't open his mouth at all. All 15 rounds, always with his mouth shut, breathing through his nose. Nowadays, we see all this new fighters, stars, young, talented fighters. They get big signing bonuses. They driving a nice Mercedes. They have jewelry all over them, and that kind of hurts their training, their preparations. Then you have friends and girls around them, and that changes. A lot of fighters are partying and drinking, and when old school fighters wouldn't do stuff like that. They always dedicated themselves to the sport. Now with all the conditioning coaches and all the nutritionists and everything, fighters still seem to get more tired than they did back in the days. 15 rounds, Salvador Sanchez fighting 15 rounds against Asuma Nelson is a perfect example that man was in shape, never opened his mouth in the whole fight. That tells you how good, how hard he was training. We don't see that anymore. Even though right now it's a great moment for boxing, the paydays are huge. The fighters are changing their lives because they are getting paid a lot of money. But it's just I don't think it's ever going to be the same.
Robert, just go back to kind of yourself growing up. What was you like with regards to your education? Was you committed to learning in school, or did you already have your mindset you wanted to enter boxing in some way, shape, or form?
Well, I never really wanted to be my whole career into boxing. I did boxing all my life. Since I was 5 years old is when I had my first amateur fight, but it was because my father was taking me and my brother, and that was something my dad pretty much pushed us to do. You guys got to fight. Let's go. Let's fight. Boxing. I always wanted to do other sports like soccer, maybe baseball, but I was never able to do stuff like that because boxing was the only thing I had to do, the only thing I could do, because that was my dad's rule. Boxing was the only thing we could do. So it wasn't the sport that I really like. I chose to do it because I wanted to. There was many moments where I wanted to quit, but there was nothing else. I went to school, graduated high school, but during my high school years, I was already a professional fighter because I turned pro at 17. So my senior year, which should have been my best year in high school, was probably the year that I didn't do anything because I was already a professional fighter. I was already getting ready for fights. I was already fighting. I had 3 fights in Japan. Then I fought in LA. So throughout prom and grad night and all those events that people do in high school, I was never to do none of that. So I kind of got, I would probably say, tired of the sport, not doing anything else but boxing. But it was something I had to do. So I did it, and my dad did a great job because I became a world champion. But it wasn't really something that I chose that because I love that much. It just happened to be that I guess my dad did a great job. I was good at it and became world champion.
Robert, do you ever look back and do you ever consider what may have been of your life if it wasn't for boxing? Do you ever consider where your life would have gone if you wasn't as heavily involved in the sport as what you are?
I haven't really thought about it because, like I tell you, growing up in my family, my dad had only one thing in mind, and it was boxing for us. So we never, my dad was old school, came from Mexico. He only had like 4 years in school. Always, always, always working hard to feed his kids. So my dad didn't have the mentality that we all have right now when it comes to our kids. School is number one. You guys got to focus on school, graduating high school, college, university, stuff like that. My dad never did that. I was the first one in my family to graduate high school. My four older sisters and my older brother, they all dropped out of school to go to work because my dad didn't think school was important at that time. So for me, it wasn't about you have to go to school because you have to get a degree, you have to get a college, university, stuff like that. It was boxing, boxing, boxing. So I didn't have another option. So that never even came to my mind. What else could I be doing if I wasn't boxing? Now at 46, yes, I know I would be doing something else, but honestly, I don't know what. I have no idea.
Robert, talking about your amateur days, what do you recollect about them and what are your fondest memories?
Well, we had one thing that I enjoyed it from the amateur days was the traveling. We traveled a lot, USA Boxing. We when my dad had the boxing gym in Oxnard, California, every weekend my dad would pack a van and travel to Los Angeles to different places in Southern California to the amateur fights. So we did that almost every weekend. So all the kids from the gym, we would get in the van. It was a 15-passenger van, and we would go to the fights. So that was fun. After the fights, then my dad would always take us to a pizza place, chicken, whatever. So that for us, that was exciting. We're going out and we're gonna go eat pizza. That was exciting. So the traveling was fun. Then when I started participating in the amateur tournaments and started being a member of USA Boxing, the traveling with Shane Mosley, with Oscar De La Hoya, it was fun. It was just Vernon Forrest, I think, was part of it too. Just a bunch of different names that made it big. It was fun, getting to train at the training center in Colorado Springs with Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, sparring them guys. It was great experience and great things that are always going to be very important for me.
Now, I'm sure when you was away with the Team USA and you was away with your camps training yourself, and whether it been with Oscar or with Shane or with anybody who you may not have mentioned, you might have been able to enjoy life outside of boxing, even if it may have only been for 1 or 2 hours. Do you have any kind of funny stories that you guys would have gotten up to when you was out there training?
I could probably go back, and if I put good thought, I'll remember a lot of good stuff. But one thing that I do remember is with Sugar Shane Mosley, it was both of our first international competition against Germany, and we were both training, and we both knew it was our first camp in USA Boxing, Colorado Springs, to compete against Germany. So we both kind of motivated each other and pushed each other to go compete. Oscar De La Hoya was already very experienced and had done it many times. Pepe Riley was another one that was an Olympian that also was there to participate. But mostly, and myself, it was our first international tournament. So for us, it was a big deal. So we kind of teamed up to both of us prepare and do good and go and give the best out there. You know, that's one memory that I have. And, you know, I remember, you know, other memories with Oscar De La Hoya running in the mountains and, you know, with snow and everything. You know, I could go back and you know, there's so many stories, but, you know, I would really have to sit down and think and remember to give you a good story.
Robert, just moving forwards with that, you mentioned obviously making your pro debut at 17. What was it like being so young, making your pro debut?
Well, it kind of just happened. I started training with Genaro Hernandez, rest in peace, a good friend of mine, Genaro Hernandez, and his older brother, his father, you know, Rudy Hernandez, his older brother, and my dad would drive me to LA to get some sparring. So I started sparring Genaro Hernandez, like I was like 15 or 16, and they liked the work I was doing with them. So when he fought for the world title in France, they flew me with them to France to be his sparring partner. And right there in France, training and sparring, Mr. Honda from Taking Promotions, he seen me spar and train. So he asked a few questions, and Rudy told him, look, he's still 16. He's trying to make the U.S. national team to go maybe represent, to go to the Olympics and stuff like that. So Mr. Honda kind of, you know, seen my talent, I guess. And then when the Olympic team was settled and I didn't make the team, I was 17 then. Genaro won his title in France. Then his first title defense was going to be in Tokyo, Japan. It was going to be in Japan. So by then I was already 17. I was Genaro's sparring partner again. And they told me, you want to go to Japan to continue sparring with Genaro, and you could turn pro at 17 in Japan. So to me, it was like, why not? Let's do it. You know, my dad didn't go. Nobody in my family went. It was just me and Rudy Hernandez and the rest of the team with Chicanito Hernandez. And I turned pro. You know, it was just something that I thought, you know, hey, why wait another 4 years? We could just turn pro. And it was, you know, running around with Genaro Hernandez. It was great experience. You know, his work ethics were unbelievable. Also, his running was incredible. So it motivated me to go out and turn pro. So I turned pro, and I had 3 fights in Japan before I turned 18, before I started fighting in the United States.
How did you find the initial transition from amateur to professional style?
I liked it much better. You know, it was just a totally different story. You know, amateurs, I'm competing against the best fighters in the United States. Their speed, their experience. Most of the guys are, 200 amateur fights, and I never had that much amateur experience. I only had like 70 amateur fights since I was 5 years old. So I didn't have a lot of amateur experience. So fighting in the pros more like my style, what I really, take my time, pick my punches, and not try to score points. In the amateurs, it's about scoring points and winning by points. The pros, a nice body shot could end the fight. A good uppercut is going to end the fight. In the amateurs, more about just scoring points. So I liked it much, much better.
At the beginning of your career, the early stages, was it difficult to continue to fight? Because from regards to a financial perspective, because I imagine it wasn't as rewarding at the beginning as what eventually it would have been as you reached world level.
In my case, I know now, like I told you earlier, nowadays, all these young fighters are already looking into big paydays. Even though when they're turning pro, they're already looking at huge signing bonuses and stuff like that. With me, we had never been around any big fights. My older brother never had big fights. So we were never, so for me, it wasn't even about the money. It was about what I love to do. I love to go in the ring and fight. I didn't really care about, about making $400 a fight, because that's probably that. If I remember, that's probably $600, $700 a fight is what we were making, and it wasn't, that wasn't the importance. I think the importance was the dream of one day becoming world champion. We never, we never thought the way young fighters think right now. When they're gonna fight for their first world title fight, they're thinking about making $1 million for when they go fighting for a world title fight. When I fought for a world title fight, my first title fight, I made $35,000. So it wasn't something that I was excited about. I was more about becoming world champion, because that was the dream for the whole family. My dad as a trainer, coming from nothing, no school, no education, picking strawberries all his life, and then his son being a world champion. For us, it was more about getting that title, and never had any, never even knew how much money was involved, because that's something we didn't really care.
Robert, as a trainer now, how do you find, just touching on the money perspective, how do you find trying to keep your fighters focused on just their boxing careers and the glory ahead? Because the more success you have, the money will naturally come. So how do you find trying to ensure your fighters stay focused on just their boxing careers and don't become swayed by a party lifestyle, the money, the influences outside of boxing?
And growing up like that with my father and myself and my older brother, not looking into the big paydays or anything like that, I think that's something that I bring with my fighters. Obviously when you're Mikey Garcia, Jose Ramirez, Virgil Ortiz, who's very close to getting into those big, huge paydays. Well, obviously, yes, it's business. And yes, me as a trainer, co-manager to some of my fighters, I think it's very important, obviously, to look at those big paydays. But every young fighter that I have, from their pro debut to their first 15, 20 professional fights, I always remind them and make sure they realize that there's never going to be a lot of money. So don't be looking to get paid an X amount of money when you're not ready for it. I want to prepare them for that day when it comes. If they ever make it to $1 million paydays, I want to prepare them to where they're not going to go blow their money and things that's not going to value it. I prepare them to buy a house, invest their money, property, stuff like that. That's one thing that my fighters know, that I'm not going to want them to blow their money. So the first 15, 20 fights, we know there's not a lot of money. So they already know, and they never question, why am I only getting so much when I see other guys making a lot more money? Don't worry about those other people. Worry about yourself. Your money is going to be your money. His money is his. You'll make it one day. Just be patient and listen. And I think all that is preparing them. So when they do make that kind of money, they don't go out and blow it like others do.
Robert, talk to me about winning the IBF World title, beating Harold Lauren. Just reflect on the fight for me. What did it mean for you and for your family to pick up that championship belt?
Well, I told you, earlier, it was huge for the whole family, especially my father, who like I told you, came from nothing, working, picking strawberries, came to the United States illegally, was working illegal here in the United States, raised my 4 sisters and my older brother all illegally here in the United States. I was the very first one that was born. It was just me and Mikey born in the United States, so I know it was hard, and I know my dad had a dream, and that was the most important thing. It was awesome. Going into the fight, we knew the fight wasn't going to be easy, but after 2 or 3 rounds, it turned into an easy fight for me. I won most of the rounds. So by the end of the fight, when the announcer was already going to announce, it wasn't going to be like something like a news when they said "and knew." I already knew. We already knew I had won. So to tell you the truth, it wasn't really that exciting, because I already knew I had won that fight. I think it was my first title defense that really made me believe that I was a world champion. winning the title was unbelievable. You know, becoming the first ever world champion in the family in Oxnard, where we grew up. It was huge. But my first title defense is when I felt like a world champion, because I was in there against my mandatory Ramon Ledon, who was undefeated. He was a great Cuban amateur star, and second round comes, he dropped me very bad. I was very hurt, but I got up, survived the round, and then I think I got cut also. So I was bleeding in my fight. I was bleeding all over my face, and I knocked him out in the fifth round. So that's the fight that kind of made me feel like I was a world champion.
Robert, then obviously just pick that back up, continue there. Couple fights I want to touch on after you winning and defending your title. The loss to Diego Corrales, obviously, again, a legendary fight, and many people remember him. What was it like, though? What do you remember about that fight?
You know what? When I lost my title, I never thought I was going to lose to Diego. I thought I was better. I thought I would dominate, and the whole team. We all thought we were going to beat Diego. But you know what? Now that I go back, you know, it's been 20 some years since that fight. I go back and I don't regret it. I actually, to me, I could say I lost my world title to a legendary fighter. Diego Corrales, after beating me, he became a superstar, especially those fights with Castillo, the first one. It's probably to me, it's the best fight ever in boxing. You know, we've had great fights, but I think that's the best fight. And knowing that I was actually doing really good, maybe even ahead on the points before he knocked me out in the seventh, that tells me that I wasn't that bad. So now I'm proud to say I lost to Diego Corrales. When it happened, it did hurt me. I couldn't believe it. You know, I cried. I was very disappointed. I lost a lot of love for the sport. After that, I just did it to get paid, I guess. After I lost my title, I fought a few more fights that I know I didn't fight with the heart, the hunger that I had before. So I lost a lot for the sport after I lost to Diego Corrales. But nowadays, I think that was the best thing that could have happened to me. It made me what I am now. And I always feel honored and proud to say I lost my title to Diego Corrales.
So with what you've just said in mind, heading into the Joel Casamayor fight, was your mentality already kind of swaying away from a love for the sport because of that loss?
Yeah, I didn't, going into the fight with Casamayor, even though I trained hard and everything, but my mind wasn't really thinking like a champion anymore. I didn't really care much about winning or anything. It was more because that's the only thing I could do. And yes, the money was okay, so I could, I could still, get paid well, better than just working, from 8 to 4 p.m. I thought it was something that I could still do and get paid well, but my mind wasn't there. I remember one thing that I'll never forget is going into the fight. I knew one of my favorite comedians was actually there at the fight. Well, two actually. It was oh my God, he's my favorite, and I just lost it. He's Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler was there. Rob Schneider was there. So for me, I was more excited about meeting them after the fight than actually winning the fight. I was, and once again, I was doing good. I think I was ahead on the cards before I got stopped, but I was more about meeting, Rob Schneider and Adam Sandler than really focused on winning the fight. I wasn't, it was something that I didn't really care anymore. I did it, like I told you, because yes, the money's better than working, at a regular job, but my heart and my mind, it wasn't motivated to be a world champion again.
Slightly off topic on boxing, Robert, but you mentioned Adam Sandler. I was actually watching Happy Gilmore the other day. So when you said he's your favorite comedian, what was your favorite Adam Sandler movie at the time?
I still watch it over and over. It's Big Daddy. I love that movie. Just the story, the little kid. It's a great movie, and I love all his movies. I'm a big fan of it. I watch all of his movies, but Big Daddy is probably my favorite.
Robert, obviously, just the link back then, going back to boxing. When you retired from professionally boxing yourself, moving into a trainer's role, how did you find that transition from professional fighter into a trainer now?
You know what? I never wanted to be a trainer. When I retired boxing, I was 26 years old. And the only thing that came to my mind was spend time with my family. I had my two boys already as little kids, and I thought about just enjoying my family, spending time with my kids. Then maybe get a little trade, go to school, take a few classes, find a job. I started working for the school district at a high school, at the high school where I graduated from, Channel High School. My friend that I went to school with had become the principal in that school. So I started visiting the school, talking to a lot of kids, and just as a volunteer. But he told me, the kids are liking you. They like you here. They like you coming to the high school. So why don't we get the district to hire you? So they hired me. So I was working, but at the same time, my dad had already told me, come to the boxing gym. Start helping me with the little kids. So I started doing that, helping my dad with the little kids, and then my dad told me, I want you to start training professional fighters. So he gave me two of the five. They're actually two of my best friends, Felipe Campa and Arturo Barraza. They both became professional fighters, and didn't make it far, but they were my friends and my fighters. So we started traveling. I traveled a lot during my professional career, but I never enjoyed any trip because you go, we have to be in a diet, we have to make weight, we have to fight, and after the fight, next day in the morning, we fly home. So me going with my fighters, they're making weight. I'm not. So I could eat whatever I want. I could go to the bar and have a beer if I want. So that's kind of what caught my attention, the traveling, the going around without having to diet, without having to go to sleep at 9 at night. I could be up to 1 or 2 in the morning if I wanted to. So that's what I liked. And those were my two first fighters that I started with. And then little by little, my younger brother, Mikey, decides to start boxing. So it kind of came together to where we started doing it again.
I know how important family is to you, Robert. I continuously see posts from yourself about your family and how close you all are, from like your Instagram story and what have you. When I speak to boxers over here in the UK who have started to turn to training themselves, they always mention that training a fighter now is actually a lot more difficult than when you are a professional fighter yourself, because you have a lot more time which you have to give to other people and you spend less time around your family. Is that kind of one of the drawbacks of being so heavily involved in the sport, and how difficult is it for you maybe not to spend as much time as what you would like to be with your family?
It is true, and it does happen. But one thing I made sure I did was get my family involved. My son, Junior, he's part of my team. He helps me with all my fighters. He trains a lot of my fighters. My father's still around. My wife, right now, this whole year with the pandemic, well, we haven't been able to travel to fights or anything, but I try to take them to all the fights. I wanted them to be involved. They have to be part of my team, because boxing, when I was boxing, I was going to training camps and spent 3 months in training camp and would be away from my family. And that was one of the reasons I retired very young, because I didn't want that to continue with my younger kids and stuff like that. But now as a trainer, it actually takes a lot more time because now it's year round. When I was fighting, it was my fights only, 2 fights a year. So it was only that time, but now it's the whole year. So that's why I try to get my whole family involved. I live very close to my gym, so I spend most of the time at home. I spend most of the time when I travel. I try to leave the day before the fight only. If I have my son or my assistants, they could go ahead and spend the whole week with my fighter. I'll just show up the night before the fight, and I go, and that works out very good for me. So I try to stay home as much as I can, show up to the fight maybe the day of the weigh-in, and that's it. I try not to go the whole week.
Robert, obviously there's a lot of fighters to kind of talk about with yourself, but only ones which in particular I want to touch on, because otherwise we will be here all night. Talk to me about when Mikey first started boxing. When did the time come when you realised you have this multi-weight world champion on your hands who could go on to achieve so many great things and be involved in so many great nights?
Well, we never thought that was going to happen with Mikey, because Mikey never wanted to go to the gym. My dad says he doesn't remember, but I remember Mikey was like 3 years old. He was the baby. And I took Mikey to the gym after one of my fights. I wasn't training, so I took Mikey to the gym. And my dad had the boxing gym with a lot of kids. And another dad also took his little 3-year-old. So Mikey was 3, the other kid was 3. And my dad wanted Mikey to spar right away because the other dad challenged my dad. Oh, let's make him spar. So Mikey said no. Mikey didn't want to. So what happened? My dad put a beating on Mikey because Mikey didn't want to spar. So, for me, I cried because that was my little brother, and my dad was, the macho man. My son's not going to say no. You better spar. You're going to spar. And he spanked him, I said put a beating, but, he spanked him, and, and that made me feel bad. So I grabbed Mikey and I took him. I went back home. And I said, I never thought Mikey would be a boxer. Growing up, I was fighting. Fernando Vargas was fighting. Mikey never wanted to go to the gym until he was like 14 years old. I tricked him into a fight. We went to see my nephew Javier, who, rest in peace. Also, he passed away 2 years ago. He was fighting, so we went to an amateur tournament, and Mikey went to see his nephew fight. But at that fight, there was another kid, Mikey's weight and age. And even though Mikey had never fought, I knew he could fight. But he had never went to the gym, but I knew he could fight. So I signed him up to have an exhibition. It wasn't a fight, but just an exhibition. I signed him up, and I told him, Mikey, I want you to go in there and have this exhibition. And he went, did really good. And after that is when he says, you know what? I like this. I kind of like it. So he started at 14 is when he started doing his amateur career with only 11 amateur fights. He made it to the National Junior Olympics. He beat a lot of former national champions, kids with 200 amateur fights, and he was beating those guys. He lost in the very finals on a very, very close fight. It was a 3-2 decision, very close fight. He lost, but made it to the finals. He was second in the whole United States with only 11 amateur fights. So that's when we realized, I think we have something special here.
What's it like training your brother, Robert? I imagine, obviously I know you're very close, but will there be times when you might have disagreements on how, Mikey might think you should train one way, or you might do something in a certain way and you think we should do it in another? Or is it all plain sailing, you all agree on everything? What is the working relationship like?
You know what? With Mikey, we always agree. Sometimes the only disagreements we have is with my dad. Because my dad still goes to the gym, still supports Mikey every day. He goes to support all of my fighters. My dad's in the gym every day with me, even if Mikey's not training. But, my dad still has that old school mentality where, put on a sauna suit so you can sweat a little more. That's my dad still thinks if we don't sweat with a sauna suit on, you're not training hard. That's the mentality he has. So sometimes we might have a few discussions because of that. But at the end, I used to box, so Mikey knows I know what it takes. So we just kind of, me and Mikey work it out together, where try to keep my dad happy also, but we don't really, do what he's telling us to do, because my dad, is still old school, still wants us to spar every day if we had to, which we don't do. Little things, little discussions like that, but not to a point where we're fighting each other. But me and Mikey always agree, because I used to fight, so Mikey understands. And look, he's already a 5-time world champion, 4 divisions. We've obviously been doing things right.
Let's touch on that. We know about Mikey's success so far. His most recent fight up at welterweight. Do you see Mikey continuing to box at welter? Because there's a lot of people who would love to see him maybe drop to super light and potentially face if Josh was to beat Jose, then potential fight there. Or there's talk in the past when Mikey used to box at super light, the Vasyl Lomachenko fight. Where do you see Mikey's career playing out?
You know what? As of right now, Mikey's still planning on fighting at welterweight, but that's because there's been a lot of talk. It's still not official, not confirmed that Mikey might fight Pacquiao. Everybody's been hearing about it, but there's nothing confirmed yet. So if that fight happens, then Mikey will fight at welterweight against Pacquiao. But we've already talked with my son Junior, my father, Mikey, myself. We've told Mikey, you're better, your best division as 140. Mikey does not want to make an announcement or say he wants to fight at 140, because his teammate Jose Ramirez wants to accomplish something that has never happened. A Mexican has never been undisputed champion ever. So Jose Ramirez, that's Jose's division right now. That's Jose's division. That's his dream. If Mikey says, "Oh, I'm fighting at 140 now, so I want everybody at 140," Mikey can't say that, because we have Jose Ramirez there. That's his teammate. They train together. They support each other. So Mikey does not want to ruin that for Jose. Jose wants to become undisputed, and if he does, then he's gonna maybe move up in weight. We're not gonna go to 140 to try to challenge Jose Ramirez. Who else are we gonna fight? If Jose is the undisputed champion at 140, who else is Mikey gonna fight? He's got all 4 titles. So if he's got all 4 titles, who's Mikey gonna fight to become a world champion when Jose Ramirez, his friend, his teammate, is the champion? So that's why I think 147 right now, if it's Pacquiao, that's fight. But after that, we have talked about, Jose. If Jose wins, maybe Jose moves up in weight. But if Taylor wins, then maybe that's a huge fight for Mikey to fight Taylor at 140. And then there's the Devin Haney's, the Ryan Garcias, the Tank Davis. They're all eventually going to move up to 140. So those would be huge fights for Mikey. We already have all that in mind. But right now, Mikey does not want to affect anything to do with Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor. That's a huge fight. So if we get the Pacquiao fight, that's the fight we're taking at welterweight. But we do want him to fight at 140.
The Manny Pacquiao fight, Robert, as you mentioned it there, how confident are you will be Mikey's next fight?
We don't know. Honestly, we would want that. And from what's been going around in the media and this and that, it looks like it's very close. But Mikey tells us, look, there is a lot of talk, and they have told me, but there's still not one promoter or team that could say we're finalizing this fight and we're putting the money together. There hasn't. There's talk about Dubai. There's talk about the zone. There's talk about this and that, and so we really don't know. Hopefully it does happen, but if not, Mikey's going to move on, and maybe that's when we make that decision after the Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor, depending on the results. Also, maybe we make that decision to fight at 140. But right now, I'm telling you, I don't want Mikey to come and interrupt Jose's fight against Josh Taylor, and I'm pretty sure Josh Taylor wouldn't want it either. You know, right now that's the big fight, and if Jose wins, then Jose becomes the first Mexican ever. If Josh Taylor wins, he also becomes the first from his country. But then that's a big fight for Mikey if we're able to put something together. But as of right now, I'm going to prepare Jose to become the first Mexican American undisputed champion of the world, because I think we got all the tools and everything to do it. But it's not going to be an easy fight. We know that in boxing, a lot of things happen.
Just a final thing on Pacquiao before we do come on to Jose, Robert. How difficult a challenge will it be for Mikey to beat Manny, or do you see Mikey as the favourite heading into it if that was to be the fight next?
Well, I don't think he'll be the favorite. He'll be the favorite for us, me, my dad, Mikey. But because we know what Mikey is, we know what Mikey has, what Mikey can do. But to the rest of the boxing world, Mikey's performance against Errol Spence was not a good one, and everybody's still going back to that. Mikey should have never fought at welterweight. He should have never fought Errol Spence. So his performance wasn't well. He came back, beat Jesse Vargas, and I thought he did good. He fought good, but it could have still been better. So that's what the boxing world still thinks. Mikey shouldn't be a welterweight. Mikey should have never fought Errol Spence. So Pacquiao should be the favorite. I agree with that. You know, the way they say it. But we know Mikey personally. We know Mikey in the gym. So we know Mikey could do a lot better. We know why Mikey didn't perform well against Errol Spence. And we're probably never going to tell the world. Mikey's never going to say what happened. Mikey's never going to say anything, because Errol Spence is a great fighter, and we don't want to take credit away from Errol Spence, because he is a great, great fighter. And I'm not saying Mikey was going to beat him. No, not at all. I'm not saying that, because Errol Spence is a great fighter, but I know Mikey would have done a lot better. But, but the boxing world still believes Mikey didn't belong there, and his performance showed it. He shouldn't have been there, but we know why. But the Pacquiao fight, Pacquiao will be the favorite, I think. I'm pretty sure he'll be the favorite, but we know what we got. We know what Mikey could do inside the ring, and with a great preparation, good game plan, I think Mikey has the tools to beat Manny Pacquiao.
I know you wouldn't want to give much away, but stylistically, how would you expect it to play out if, once again, it was to go ahead, Mikey versus Manny?
A very, very technical fight, very dangerous fight. Pacquiao is very fast. Pacquiao has great footwork, and the speed that he's got is incredible. I know he's got great power too. You know, I faced him twice with Margarito and Brandon Rios. Keith Thurman saying that he thought Pacquiao had bricks in his hands. You know, we know how strong Pacquiao is. So it's a very, very, it's going to be like a chess match fight, because Mikey's style is not a brawler. Mikey's not a runner. Mikey's more like a counter punch, kind of like Marquez style. Pacquiao is very fast. Pacquiao has faced Marquez 4 times. So Pacquiao is already used to something like that. So it's a difficult fight. It's not an easy fight for Mikey, but it's not going to be easy for Pacquiao either. So it's going to be a very, very technical fight where whoever makes the first mistake is going to pay and might get hurt, you know, because it is that type of fight.
Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor, as you mentioned earlier on, is a brilliant fight. Everybody's looking forward to that, undisputed at 140. Many see Josh as a favourite, Robert. Just your thoughts on the fight, though, and what are you guys kind of preparing for, and how are you expecting it again to play out?
You know what? I also understand why Taylor might be the favorite, and I think the odds did start with Josh Taylor as the favorite, which is reasonable. Maybe from the performance, both the performance against what's his name, the Russian kid that, oh man, Jose just fought him in his title defense, and Josh Taylor also fought him.
Victor
I can't remember his name. Victor Postol. There you go. Maybe from the both the performance, Jose didn't have the best performance against Postol, Josh Taylor might have had a better performance. So maybe that's why, they're pretty much seeing both their performances. No excuses either. Postol is a great fighter, awkward, difficult, tall, lanky. So that's I'm not trying to say excuses, but Jose Ramirez was training for over a year for that fight. With the pandemic, we already had a date, February. The pandemic came, canceled the fight. Then we had another date in May, and then it was canceled. Then we go to to the day of the fight. So it was 3 training camps, 2 cancellations. Jose is not able to be around the family. We're in training camp. I was frustrated too. Jose was frustrated. The whole team was frustrated. So it wasn't the best training camp ever because we had too many training camps. His body was tired. Too many sparring matches. We spar tough, so the sparring is not easy. So all that, no fans in the arena. The family wasn't around. It was difficult, but it was also difficult for Postol. So it's not. That's why I'm not. That's why I'm telling you, I'm not trying to bring out excuses for Jose because Postol was going through the same thing. He also had 3 training camps. He also was away from his family. He was also frustrated, but fighters, there's some that get affected a little bit more mentally wise. And I think Jose was already tired. He was already sick of training, and he still fought, still won. But yeah, it wasn't his best performance. So I think that's probably why they're comparing both fights against Postol, both fighters against Postol, and they're giving the edge to Josh. And Josh had a great fight against Regis Prograis also. So that's another thing that they might be using because he had a great fight. He fought a great fight against Regis. It was a good fight. It was a close fight, but he won. But it was a great fight, and he showed a lot in that fight too. So maybe they're using those fights to give him the advantage. But Jose already rested up. He's already in camp. He's mentally ready. His newborn baby is about to be born today or tomorrow. So that's going to motivate him a little bit more. I think it's going to be a total different Jose going against Taylor.
Talk to me about that. Is this a fight where you see them going toe to toe? We know what Josh loves a violent fight, loves to be aggressive, come forwards, throw as much as what he can, loves to get involved in a fight. And we know Jose loves it himself. Is this one of those where we can just expect fireworks?
You know what? I think we just seen maybe fight of the year so far last weekend with Chocolatito Gonzalez and Estrada. Great fight. But I truly believe that Jose Ramirez versus Josh Taylor, because Josh Taylor showed me in his fight against Regis Prograis that he could fight. He has heart, and he could punch. He could take a punch. He's a great fighter also. I think that Jose Ramirez versus Josh Taylor could be as good or even better because both have so much on the line to win. So they're both going to train like never before. I'm not saying Chocolatito and Estrada didn't train because for them it was the same thing. It was a rematch where Estrada wanted to get revenge. Chocolatito wanted to, it was another great fight. And so far it's fight of the year. But I think Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez could end up being a better fight than that because I just think it's going to be a great fight.
Just to touch on the Chocolatito Estrada fight, it was a brilliant fight, as you mentioned. But what did you make of it? And what did you score it, Robert? Because certainly the 117, 111 scorecard has caused a huge kind of uproar across social media. And I've since seen that judge has been suspended by the WBA.
See, that I think that hurts Estrada's win. And everybody's talking about, that ref, that judge that gave that decision. I think it was a big mistake for that scorecard. But that shouldn't affect Estrada's win because a lot of people, because of that scorecards, a lot of people are taking the credit away from Estrada's win. I think I scored it by, very close. I scored it to Chocolatito. But there was a lot of very close rounds that could have actually gone either way. So with Estrada winning, I'm okay with that too. I think there was a lot of close rounds where maybe I thought Chocolatito won, but easily any judge or any other person could think it was the other way around. So I'm not disputing that. I think Estrada earned his win, and it was that close that could have gone either way. But that scorecard that judge gave is what's kind of giving that bad look, or giving that credit away from Estrada. I think he deserves all the credit because he fought a great fight, and even though it was so close and it could have gone either way, that decision shouldn't affect Estrada's performance, because he had a great performance. They both had a great performance. We got to talk about how great that fight was and not how bad that judge was. That judge, we shouldn't even talk about it. Estrada won, and that's it. Give him his credit and his respect.
Robert, let's move forward again onto this coming weekend. Virgil Ortiz, Maurice Hooker, once again, a brilliant fight. How's Virgil looking, though, and what are you guys getting ready for with regards to Maurice Hooker?
You know what? It's a great fight for Virgil, because not only is in hometown, both Virgil and Maurice Hooker fighting in their hometown. It's going to be a great event, but Virgil's something special. Virgil is not a normal person. He's not a normal boxer. I respect Hooker. I met Hooker when Jose Ramirez fought him. He's a great person, great family man. I'm telling you, probably one of the persons in the sport of boxing. But we're gonna fight against each other, just like Jose was. We went there to win, and Jose won. But after the fight, nothing but respect to Hooker, because he's a great fighter, great warrior. But Virgil's just a different. I think Virgil's just one of those few fighters that we don't. And I think Virgil, I don't want to disrespect Hooker and his team, because he has a great team also. But I think Virgil wins by knockout.
Talk to me about that, because there's a lot of excitement about Virgil, Robert, with regards to his career planning out now, provided Saturday goes to plan. How far off do you think he is, the elite guys, the Errol Spencers, the Terence Crawfords?
You know what? His dad, Virgil Sr., and myself, yesterday, actually, we were watching Virgil do mitts with Hector Beltran, and we were looking at his footwork, and his dad was showing me, he says, look, this is what we needed to see this last week. His footwork, his speed. It's just, hard training camp, hard sparring, in 2.5 months of training. Every fighter goes through. Sometimes they're tired. Sometimes they don't perform as well. Sometimes the trainer, myself, the dad, might be a little disappointed because your performance wasn't the best. Maybe sometimes there's an injury, a rib, a knee because of running. There's training camps are always like that. There's always something. So there's always something, sometimes where we might be questioning, man, is he going to perform well? But what we seen yesterday, what the dad was showing you, and what the dad seen yesterday in his footwork, we seen that the kid is ready. He's fresh, he's fast, and he's excited about it. He's ready to go and perform. And I think it's going to be a great performance. I think he's going to go out and perform and be cautious the first few rounds, because Hooker's a great fighter and he could punch also, but I think he'll break him down and I think he will get the knockout, before 8 or 9 rounds.
Now, Robert, we last saw each other in person in Miami a few weeks ago, the Canelo Yildirim undercard, rather, where Alexis Espino was fighting. Talk to me about Alexis, your work with him, and how excited are you for his future?
You know what? That's one of my young fighters. Still fighting 6 rounds. So we talked about this earlier. Right now I'm about getting him the experience. I'm not about, oh, we need to get paid a few more $1,000 because you already have so many fights, so I got to tell Eddie Hearn to pay you more. No, to me, I'm focused on this kid experience. He still needs a lot of experience. He is very strong. Everybody he spars David Benavides. He spars, he's had a few sparring sessions with Virgil Ortiz, Carlos Adames, Esquiva Falcao, top fighters, Olympians, medalists, world champions. And one thing they all say is, damn, this kid hits hard. This kid hits very hard. So, but he does need a lot of experience also. Sparring with those guys, he's getting all the experience he can in the gym. Now I just got to bring it to the fights. I'm gonna be take my time with him. There's no rush. He's only 21. There's no rush. I want to take my time. I don't want to rush him, but slowly, I think this kid could be a world champion. He's got the team behind him. He's got the power. Eddie Hearn is doing a great job. They're really fighting him often. We already have another date for next month, so they're keeping him busy. But we gotta be patient with him. I want to take my time with him.
Now, Robert, I saw you tweet earlier about you'd love to see Bam Rodriguez versus Hiroto Koyaguchi next if it was possible. Talk to me about that.
I was a little disappointed because, I didn't look for that fight. They called me. Matchroom called me and told me, you want that fight? I said, of course I want that fight. Okay, we have so-and-so date, okay? I'm like, I'm in, let's do it. So then they tell me, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put them both on the same card so we could build up the fight. They both fight on the same card. Jesse and the champion, they fight different opponents. So then we could build the fight up. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me too. But that didn't happen either. So I'm not going to wait for them to tell me we could do it so-and-so day. Now, Mr. Honda is backing me up with Jesse. Mr. Honda, I fought for Mr. Honda my first three professional fights in Japan. So we've always had a very good relationship. So he's always been supporting me with Jesse. So he knew what was going on. He knew that we were scheduled to fight, and he was okay with it. But when that didn't happen, and right away he got him another date. We already have another date for Jesse, but Jesse's ready for any champion. I'm telling you, Jesse's gonna be one of those special fighters. I have no problem saying that Jesse could be a 4-division champion without a problem. He gets a title 108, he'll move up to 112, 115. You know what I mean? This kid is very good. In the gym, we have him sparring my featherweights, my junior lightweights. He spars all those guys, and believe me, my dad tells me, you know what, you're gonna have to start sparring with guys like Mikey and Jose Ramirez because he's that good. This kid is gonna be in the pound for pound list a few years from now.
Now, Robert, just before I let you go, obviously we've mentioned a lot of fighters there. Just talk to me about the ones who we haven't mentioned, though. What else has everybody got in store?
You know what? We have so many fighters that I hate to mention some and not all of them. But I have 2 fighters that are going to be fighting on the Jose Ramirez Josh Taylor card, and those are 2 that the world is gonna learn about after that event. Raymond Murataya, undefeated lightweight that I have, and Lindolfo Delgado, Mexican Olympian, 140 pounder. Both are gonna be on the Jose Josh Taylor undercard, and they're gonna show their talent. Both are great fighters. Both are one of them 140 and the other one 135. At 135, I think this kid has the skills with the experience, not now, but with the experience, he's got the skills to compete against any of the world champions at 135. And Lindolfo Delgado on 140, after Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor fight, obviously, I'm not saying he's ready for them, but for anybody at 140, I think Lindolfo will also be ready. So those are two that I think are going to be the future in my gym. I have a lot more, but at least those two that are fighting on those cards. The other ones I might not have date for right now, but those two are fighting on that undercard. So I think those two I could mention because they have dates and they're fighting on the big card, and those two can really fight too.
Now, Robert, just want to quickly ask you about a couple of other fights which are coming up. Start off with Canelo Saunders. Your thoughts on it? Does Billy Joe possess the style which can overcome the pound-for-pound king in Saul Canelo Alvarez?
I think that's, what, I think it's going to be built up as a good challenge for Canelo, but Canelo right now, I think he's unbeatable, and I think Canelo wins by knockout.
And then just want to get your thoughts as well on Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. A lot of talk around that fight, undisputed heavyweight bout, if it could go ahead this year. Your thoughts, how do you think it would play out?
If that fight does happen, I've been a huge fan of Anthony Joshua since he came out of the Olympics. I remember traveling to England with one of my fighters, Gradovich fought in England against, I don't even remember who he fought, but he fought in England, and Joshua was on that card. I remember, I didn't even know who Joshua was. I knew from the Olympics, but I didn't know it was him there. He came in, I could see his face. He had, he was smiling. I seen his face, his smile, and I said, you know what? That kid right there is going to be a superstar. I think it was like a 6-round fight or an 8-round fight before he was a big name. Obviously coming off the Olympics, he was already a big name in England, but not in the United States. We didn't know who he was. We didn't know him much. We didn't know much about him, but I seen him, and since then, I followed his career and I became a fan. I think Joshua's going to win. I think Joshua beats Fury.
Robert, we'll leave that there now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate your time this evening. I'll keep in touch. That was a fantastic interview. Thank you for speaking about your entire journey in boxing so far. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Look, this was awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. It's great. I love, going over boxing and giving my honest prediction. If I think, so I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna say, oh well, the fans are gonna enjoy a great night, or the fans are gonna win. No, I'm gonna be honest. I tell you how it is, how I feel. I might be wrong also, but you're gonna get an honest answer from me every time you guys want something from me.
Robert, that's brilliant to hear, because I've appreciated this and enjoyed it today.
Thank you, and sorry for all the noise from my dogs. They're loud, and sorry for that, but they're just loud.
It's all good, Robert. Like I say, I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Awesome.